أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد. It's a great pleasure and great honor to welcome you to the series of webinars that are part of the ISDB Group Annual Meetings 2022. This is one of the webinars that is taking place today, the 23rd of May 2022 at 10:30 a.m. KSA time. The theme of the webinar today is the role of robust STI ecosystems in building economic resilience and sustainable growth in ISDB member countries. And we have an array of speakers and a moderator that are going to, enrich our day with a number of discussions. But before we go in, let us listen to the recitation of the Quran.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد.
خير الكلام ما قل ودل. And this beautiful recitation from the Quran. Thank you very much, colleagues. And before we go into the remarks by His Excellency, the Vice President, Dr. Mansour Mukhtar, let me say a little bit about this webinar. It's organized jointly by the Science, Technology and Innovation Department and the ISDB Center of Excellence in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. And it's very clear, as you can see, the prominent involvement of Brother Abida and colleagues from the Center of Excellence over there. And it will feature a unique blend of diverse MCs experiences in adapting to and leveraging the STI ecosystem to support resilience and recovery, which is actually the theme of our annual meeting this year, including countries like Egypt, Malaysia, and Mozambique. Additionally, the webinar will shed light on the experiences and role of international development agencies in strengthening STI ecosystems, featuring STI policy, global experts from UNCTAD, UNESCO, and other ISDB countries. So it's quite a mishmash of a number of activities that I do hope will enrich our discussion today. Before we go into the main event, I have the pleasure to invite His Excellency, the Vice President Operations, Dr. Mansour Mukhtar, to give us his opening remarks. Your Excellency, please.
Thank you, Dr. Jamil. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Prof. Dr. Eugenia Kosa, National Director for Science and Technology, Minister of Science and Technology and Higher Education of Mozambique. Prof. Madam Hazami Habib, CEO, Academy of Sciences, Malaysia. Prof. Mahmoud Sakar, President, Academy of Scientific Research and Technology in Egypt. Dr. Ezra Clark, Chief of Section for Science, Technology and Innovation Policy, UNESCO. Ms. Lieping Zhang, Chief of Science, Technology and Innovation Policy Section, UNCTAD, and Prof. Salma Abbasi, Chairperson and CEO, E-Worldwide Group, and our moderator today. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to our webinar on the role of robust STI ecosystems in building economic resilience and sustainable growth in ISDB member countries. This webinar is organized on the sidelines of the 2022 ISDB annual meetings. It provides us with a platform to discuss the role of STI in addressing the prevailing challenges in our member countries. With over 400 million people living in absolute poverty in ISDB member countries, we need to devise strategies that foster innovation, reduce unemployment, increase productivity, enhance competitiveness, fight diseases and epidemics, and eliminate illiteracy, among other things. Despite being blessed with all the resources to prosper, it is disheartening that most of our member countries are still engaged in export of raw materials while remaining heavily dependent on import of manufactured goods and services. The world is rapidly changing, and the advanced countries are experiencing a fourth industrial revolution, a revolution that has disrupted the current production techniques and created new challenges as well as opportunities for development. The COVID-19 pandemic has also disrupted all sectors, while clearly demonstrating that nations with strong science, technology, and innovation ecosystems and technological capabilities were far more prepared to respond quicker to the health, economic, and social shocks caused by the pandemic. We therefore need to support our member countries create an enabling environment through strong institutions, infrastructure, policies, and strategic frameworks, among others. We also need to note that with all these emerging trends, our member countries face a financing gap of $1 trillion annually to meet the SDGs, which is beyond the capacity of one institution. However, our member countries, although very diverse, are brought together by shared backgrounds, geography, and common challenges that can be solved through exchanging practical experiences with peers, an exchange that could potentially empower these countries to shape homegrown responses rather than relying on external interventions that are most times not suitable to their development challenges. We believe that this peer-to-peer collaboration will help member countries share, learn, and explore their complementary strengths. It could also pave the way for emergence of a paradigm shift towards horizontal partnerships that are based on equity, trust, mutual benefit, and long-term relations. This will complement the financial and technical assistance from MDBs and other donors, as well as offer an opportunity for latecomer economies to accelerate their development by skipping some of the intermediate stages experienced by their peers. As we move towards a post-pandemic reality and recovery, sharing knowledge and creating beneficial partnerships, our member countries will contribute to breaking the cycle of poverty, instability, and development inequalities, while promoting the principle of effective ownership of national development strategies. To support the exchange of solutions between member countries in a comprehensive, adaptive, and mutually beneficial approach, the Islamic Development Bank established its Center of Excellence in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, with STI being one of its core focus areas. An overarching objective is to scale up successful experiences from member countries in an ecosystem approach tailored to the local context through facilitating exchange of end-to-end solutions while ensuring win-win collaborations. Additionally, ISDB has prioritized support to member countries through investments in green, resilient, and sustainable infrastructure, as well as inclusive human capital development aimed at boosting overall economic recovery, tackling growing poverty, building stronger resilience, and driving robust green economic growth. Our aim is to help member countries build back better with stronger and more resilient and competitive economies. ISDB has also developed the STI operational strategy, tagged STIOS 2025, which represents our agenda for STI policy action. The strategy provides the necessary framework for creation of an enabling environment and for development and application of innovative solutions to address the multifaceted challenges of our member countries by integrating STI into the bank's operations. As part of the strategy, ISDB partnered with UNESCO in 2019 to respond to the needs of Mozambique and Uzbekistan for building stronger and more efficient STI ecosystems that facilitate the achievement of broader socioeconomic objectives, including sustainable development goals. This partnership was very successful, resulting in development of evidence-based and gender-inclusive STI policies for sustained economic growth, which has attracted the interest of other member countries. I am glad to note that a representative from the Republic of Mozambique is here with us today and will share this experience. More recently, ISDB conducted a survey to determine the needs as well as identify the challenges and priorities for the development of STI ecosystems in our member countries. This formed the basis for further elaboration of a member country assistance and partnership plan. In conclusion, I believe that these and other efforts by ISDB and partners will create multiplier effects as well as change the trajectory of development in our member countries. I do look forward to an interesting discussion by the panel of eminent presenters in our here today on the strategic measures we can take to strengthen this collaboration in our member countries. I also take this opportunity to thank the organizers of this event. Distinguished guests, I thank you all for your kind attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for this speech full of thoughts. For those who are just joining us, I can see that the room is getting full. We have about 55 people, and I do believe that more people are going to join. This is the webinar on the robust STI ecosystem and economic resilience and sustainable growth in ISDB member countries. And we have had a lot of key points from the speech of His Excellency the Vice President. 400 million people in ISDB member countries suffering from poverty, yet there is a $1 trillion gap in terms of financing. That's something that I do believe, hopefully, when it comes to the panel discussion, issues will come up. For those who are joining again, we have interpretation available in this webinar. So you can look at the bottom of your screen. There is a button for interpretation. You can listen to the webinar in English, Arabic, or French. So you are free to choose whatever you want. We would like to also encourage our listeners to engage in the chat box. And if you have questions and answers, please do post them. It's also available over there. Now it's the time to go into the crux of the matter. We have a moderator who is going to oversee the session, Professor Salma Abbasi, who is a technologist, philanthropist, and social activist with a proven track record as a visionary leader with dynamic drive and positive energy. She motivates both professionals and civil society. She is the chairperson and CEO of eWorldwide Group, an international enterprise focusing on innovation, sustainable development, and holistic inclusion of marginalized communities, both at the strategic and tactical level. A former senior vice president and chief quality officer, Lucent Technologies, she has over 40 years experience in the field of technology, innovation, people-centric design, and policy development. Professor Abbasi is a graduate of civil engineering with a master's degree in electrical engineering. She also has a PhD in information and communication technologies for development. So you can see the connection clearly. This diverse experience and background has given Professor Abbasi a unique foundation to innovatively resolve complex problems at both strategic and tactical levels in the public and private sectors around the world. As chairperson of the eWorldwide Group, Professor Abbasi is using her vast international experience and knowledge, along with her global network, to create resilient and self-inclusive green digital economies and societies. She is leveraging and transforming best practices to develop unique multi-sector, multi-stakeholder engagement partnerships and models. Professor Salma Abbasi, we couldn't be more honored to have you today to moderate our session, and I hand over the microphone to you.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction and this opportunity. I'm honored to once again participate and partner with the Islamic Development Bank. I am always impressed with the agility of which the bank transforms its agendas and priorities to support the member countries as we face diverse challenges. And of course, COVID-19, building digital resilience, recovery, and a future for building back better is a fantastic strategy to have. Science and innovation technology has proven itself time and time again to be the glue that connects us all together, but also economically, socially, also allows a future to be built. That being said, today's panel, our elite speakers, I will introduce them shortly, but the structure that we have created is going to allow us to have an interactive session with you, 5 minutes for each of our speakers to give you a background of the strategic areas where their interventions and science and technology has proven to be beneficial for their countries. And then we will have a rapid fire, 2 minutes for each of the panelists. And as Brother Mohammed had just said, we want you to please put your questions in chat. Then we move to a second round of questions, and then we will move into a Q&A forum for 6 minutes where we would like you to raise your questions and have the panelists respond. And then we move, the third session is going to be 2 minutes from 3 groups, Malaysia, UNCTAD and UNESCO, to talk about how can we foster greater collaboration to reach the agenda that was shared by the Vice President, Dr. Mansour. So that being said, I will now move to a 1-minute brief introduction for our panelists. Now, this information is also available on the ISDB website for this session. I will go in the order that the speakers will appear. The first, I'd like to introduce Dr. Hazmi Habib. She is currently serving as the Chief Executive Officer of the Academy of Sciences for Malaysia, a think tank body focusing on science, technology, and innovation policy and strategic projects. She leads the management of the Academy that comprises of the amount of more than 700 STI experts in Malaysia. She joined ASM in 1996. Her years of the Academy have involved her in several international and national level studies and programs, National Astronaut Program and National Science Challenges for ASEAN countries, Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation, relate to STI first, second, and third, science and technology policy, and others. Among the ASM flagship studies, she has overseen the Mega Science Framework Study, the Foresight Study for Malaysia's 2050 Education, Science and Technology, and others. She has been appointed the board member and trustee of Young Pinar Nagar that focuses on designing learning modules for gifted children, which is fantastic. Regionally, she has represented Malaysia in a few talks and forums, including China, ASEAN Technology Transfer, STI Cooperation in China, and has worked on mobility workshops in Thailand and other countries. Also, the Innovative Forum from Korea in 2019, and a symposium in Washington, DC. As the chair of Science and Technology Innovation Committee, the APEC Policy Partnership of Science and Technology Innovation 2017 to date, the Secretary of Malaysia and the Council and the Disciplinary Panel for Malaysia Medical Council. So the work that she is driving is cross-sectorial, but infusing science and technology and led by the Ministry of International Trade and Industry. Her interest and expertise in STEM, talent development, policy and strategic science, communication, and the 4 science in science, diplomacy, and governance. Welcome. Our second speaker is Professor Mohammed Sakir. Sakir is a professor of plant biotechnology at the National Research Center and is honored to be the president of the Academy of Scientific Research and Technology since April 2014. Since then, he has been working actively in restructuring the ASRT vision, mission, and objective to be an effective national academic of science and public supporter of complete the cycle for innovation in Egypt, to materialize the objectives of 8 years action plan, which has drafted. The plan that focuses on nurturing and enabling the environment for STI in Egypt with a special focus on STI indicators, strategies, policies, and benchmarking national research institutions, empowering the youth, science for society, academia, industry partnerships, and public-private partnerships. Sakir has served in other national positions, such as acting as the president for ASRT, vice president of ASRT, executive director for the Science Technology Department since May 2012 to 2014. Before joining STI administration, he held a position of genetic engineering and biotechnology division in NCR, co-founding the director of the Center of Scientific Excellence and Advanced Science in NRC. Sakir has more than 130 scientific publications, mashallah, and 5 books, co-authored books, received state prizes of scientific encouragement in advanced biotechnology and the NRC prize for scientific encouragement in biotechnology, and the NCI Prize for Scientific Excellence in Biotechnology. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Our third speaker is Professor Eugenia Kosa, holds a PhD in Science Education from the University of Western Cape, South Africa, master's degree in Science and Education Biology, and teaching from the University of Witwatersrand, South Africa, a graduate in biotechnology teaching Rockford in Germany. In 1983, she completed her training for biology chemistry teacher at the Faculty of Education in Idur Mondlane University. She began her career in biology teaching in 1982, General Secondary School. Since 1993, she has been a professor in EMU in the Faculty of Science Education and Agronomy and Forestry Engineering, teaching various disciplines, undergraduates and postgraduates, general botany, cell biology, plants, science and technology and environments, and gender and society, teacher training and professional development, environmental education methodology, education, environment development. In parallel to teaching, she supervises undergraduates, masters and PhD students, and is involved in research of several publications. Since 2008 and 2016, she was the Dean of the Faculty of Education at EMU, and since February 2016 to April 21, was the National Director of Higher Education, Ministry of Science and Technology and Higher Education. Currently, since 2018, she is the National Director of Science, Technology and Innovation at the Ministry of Science and Technology and Higher Education. The scientific areas of interest in education are in planning, curriculum development, evaluation and monitoring, policy and strategy for development of higher education, gender and environmental issues. Welcome. From our UN agency side, I will start with UNESCO. Dr. Ezra Clark is the Chief of Section for Science and Technology and Innovation Policy, STIP, and currently Officer in charge of the Division of Science Policy and Capacity Building in the natural science sector within United Nations Education, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO. Welcome. Prior to Ezra's work in United Nations, he was working for 14 years at United Nations Environmental Programme. He was previously employed by the UK-based NGO working in the area of marine environmental threats and chemical smuggling. Ezra holds a PhD in freshwater ecology, hydrology from Exeter University. Welcome. Our last speaker is Miss Lim Ping from UNCTAD. Her career in 1988 in the Ministry of Commerce in China, where she participated in trade policy and trade negotiating in the formulation of China's development plan, as well as laws, regulations affecting the trade and investment. Her career in the ministry progressed from being the Deputy Director of Goods Division in 1997, Director of Services in 2001, and one of the Deputy Generals, Director General in WTO 2007 between 2002 and 2009. She was the Counselor and Chief of the Unit for Textile and Clothing, Service Trade and WTO sessions for the Chinese mission in WTO Geneva. In October 2009, Ms. Lipin joined the Trade Division of UNCTAD as a Senior Economic Affairs Officer, working in trade negotiations and commercial diplomacy, ranging from trade in goods and trade in services. And since July 2020, she has been heading the Science and Technology Innovation Policy section located in the Science and Technology of ICT branch division in UNCTAD. Wow, so you can see from this diverse background of all of our speakers, they bring a wealth of knowledge and diverse experience that are going to help bring insights into the whole structure today. So that being said, I'm going to move to our first speaker, first member country. We're going to go with three first, Malaysia, Egypt, and Mozambique. So Madam Hazmi, this is to you now. We have 5 minutes for your intervention or presentation. The question that I'd like you to touch on in your discussion, as the Vice President, Dr. Mansour has mentioned, Malaysia has developed an integrated approach known as the 10-10 Malaysian STIE framework that combines two major sectors in the country, STI and the economy, to ensure all programs are implemented complementing each other and have high impact. Can you give us a picture on how this framework works and how is it likely to impact the long-term growth and development of the country? Thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you, Professor Salma Abbasi. Thank you for the kind introduction. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Thank you for SDB for inviting Malaysia to share our experience on how we try to strengthen our STI ecosystem. This slide shows the landscape of Malaysia in the fast track to show where we are. So if you can see on knowledge content of our key economic sectors, Malaysia's current GDP is 1.2 trillion, and can we enhance it, and if so, how? So if you see, technology is the fuel of the future economy. These technologies are STI driven. After 65 years of our independence, we do have building pockets of success. As you can see, there are some socioeconomic sectors whereby we are pace sectors and adapters. But Malaysia also has laggards and also imitators. How to move all our economic sectors up to the value chain, and to move forward, we need to address pressing challenges with whole of government strategic approach. So when we see our landscape, we also saw that in the investment, how do we spend our R&D fund? We spend very less in experimental development, only 24.5%. So we need to change this landscape to increase like any other developing country that spend more than 50% in experimental development. When we see the players in R&D to translate all our knowledge into new technology, new product and services, we can see Malaysia is a bit unique, whereby most of our researcher is at Institute of Higher Learning, that is 79.92%. With this landscape, academy come up with a suggestion of a framework of 10-10 My STIE to our government for us to address the socio-economic challenges, implementation mechanism, how this framework will enable the deployment of high impact projects to address needs of communities as well as quality of life at specific localities in Malaysia. The mechanism of this 10-10 My STIE comprise of 6 steps. This framework will make us more focused, prioritize of what areas that we want to focus in our 5 years Malaysia plan, systemize our innovation ecosystem, build up a collaborative platform internally and externally, and make sure all the projects, R&D initiative that we want to do in our Malaysia plan is inclusive, targeted to the areas and specific community that we want to give the solutions and also to increase their socio-economic, and to ensure all program that we want to do under the Malaysian plan, the 12 Malaysian plan and 13 Malaysian plan is future-proof to at least 10 to 15 years of all what we want to embark in this 10 years time. Next slide. So what we do under the 10-10 My STIE, we have identified, can be used by all member countries of ISDB, the 10 science and technology drivers that we have identified, and Malaysia now is enhancing our experts network for us to have on top of the knowledge of this expertise that we need of all these technology drivers that we have identified, and to enhance 10 socioeconomic drivers. So this framework can be the guiding tool to deep dive and serve as the base metric for engagement with all relevant ministries, agencies, industries, and researchers towards implementing high impact projects. So each member countries of ISDB can use this framework, but the socioeconomic drivers can change based on the needs of your country or your regions. Next slide. So with this also, for us to make us more focused towards what we want to do for the next 10 years, we have identified 30 niche areas based on the 10 socioeconomic areas that we want to transform in 10 years. So this niche area can make us prioritize what we should do, how we should put our resources, what are the multiplier effect of each area that can give to other socioeconomic that give the valid mandate for the government to fund the projects, initiative, and and research. Next slide. So with that, we also went through this framework. We want to strengthen the STI innovation helix ecosystem. This is where we will measure the gaps of infrastructure, intellectual capital, integrity, incentive, institutions, interactions, and internationalization of each ecosystem that we identified we want to develop. In this case, in Malaysia, we want to develop many ecosystems in the 30 niche area that we want to focus up to 10 years. With this AI innovation ecosystem, next slide, we want how to move the things nationally in Malaysia. We will form a lot of collaborative platform. So we will bring all the players in this collaborative platform and orchestrate the movement, the initiative, and the planning. For instance, we will bring connectors, producers, and manufacturers, technology providers, financing providers, standard setters and regulators, supply chain and logistics, market access providers, and capacity builders to work together, all these clusters to work together to come up with a full set of supply chain and value chain of each initiative that we do and iron out all the gaps, regulations, facilitated by government. And in this case, we show how IsDB can play at least 2 to 3 roles of this collaborative platform as connectors, as financing providers, and also maybe capacity builders. So now we are building up this collaborative platform nationally in Malaysia for us to do all our initiative program and R&D to ensure the impact of it really direct to the localities to make sure all the project is inclusive and no one is left behind. What we did under this framework, we have mapped out all the needs, plans, strength, what are the institutions of each region. We can replicate the same exercise to all member countries among IsDB members for us to also do the same kind of mechanism to ensure all the programs that we do is inclusive and impactful under the R&D, STI, and also technology transfer. And last but not least, how to make sure this impactful, we will couple it with all our highest national policy like 12 Malaysia Plan and also the national policy of STI. So this is what we want to share under the 10-10 MySTI to answer the question from Prof. Salma on the impact of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I've let you go over by 2 minutes. I want you to know that deliberately.
I'm sorry.
No, don't worry. I think it's an amazing insight. I think the matrix is going to help us. It'll bring us to the conversation in the third round when we talk about fostering cooperation. It's extremely relevant. And I think that what you've said about the way you've analyzed and looked at the scale changing depending on our member countries' priorities and social challenges that they face is extremely relevant. And that kind of diversity is what we need to bring out. And when we look at COVID-19 response, recovery, and rebuilding initiatives, again, going back to the vice president's statement of building back better, this is where we can leverage and adjust accordingly to see how the bank can help member countries, but also how the countries can help each other in South-to-South cooperation. Excellent. I'm also, commending you for the people-centric economy, which is at the heart of what we do, but also making technology for social good, bringing back the key stakeholders together. Excellent. Thank you, madam, very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
I'd like to now move to the second speaker, which is Professor Sakr from Egypt. You have 5 minutes. I will give you a warning after one, but I'm sure you'll have excellent contribution. Over to you, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much, Professor Salma, for the introduction. If you kindly allow me, I would like my colleagues, organizer, to give me the permission to move the slides very quickly because I have very limited time. My presentation is quite a bit long. So if you kindly allow me.
Yes, please. You may share your screen. Thank you.
Yeah. So I share from my laptop, okay?
Yes, Professor. Please go ahead.
So just a moment. Okay, it's okay now. Can you see my screen?
No, Professor, we cannot see your screen.
Yes, okay, let's start from the beginning.
While they adjust your slides, I'm just going to speak up on some of the points that we've been discussing with yourself. As Egypt has developed a national STI strategy since 2013, the aim is to help Egyptian society to be more creative and innovative and productive using science, technology, and knowledge. Now, however, we know that the STI system is still a little bit suffering from low investment and low R&D and poor infrastructure. One of the things that we're hoping you'll be able to share today is how your experience, are you managing to achieve this and inspire and leverage the ancient, beautiful history of Egyptian civilization, which has been, leaders in the world when we were still living in caves. So, and explain also the STI interventions that you put in place to address the current challenges. And I'm just reading this, Professor, while they get your slides up. So as soon as your slides come, I'll stop talking.
So,
and it's not there yet. Ah, here we are. Fantastic.
Okay,
go ahead.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I will try to do my best in the 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Actually, I would like to share with you, just to give you an overview about Egypt STI ecosystem, Egypt STI strategy, and action plan to boost innovation ecosystem. Of course, if we have time, we will see together some examples, but the most important actually is to show you an overview about Egypt STI ecosystem. This is our innovation, or let us say STI ecosystem. It's a multi-layer system, 5 layers or 5 strata, as you see. The highest actual level in this ecosystem is Science Advisory Board affiliated to Presidency, and it provides scientific consultation to the President of Egypt, followed by Higher Council for Science and Technology, chaired by Prime Minister. And the main mandate of this council is to put or draft the strategic direction of the country in the field of science and technology. The third level or strata is the Ministry of Higher Education, and as you can see, the Academy of Scientific Research and Technology on the right of the screen or of the slides. And the Academy of Scientific Research and Technology in Egypt has a dual mandate. It is the national think tank of the country, house of expertise, so it takes care of strategic studies, planning, preparation of technological roadmaps, and so on. But at the same time, also, it is a governmental funding organization for the complete cycle of innovation in Egypt. The first strata in our ecosystem is the national funding organization named Science, Technology, and Innovation Funding Authority, STDF, and a new funding mechanism called Innovator Support Fund. And the fund of this new structure is not from the public fund of the government, it's from the profit of some organization affiliated or interested in science, technology, innovation. And of course, the most important strata in the ecosystem is the universities and the research centers. Now we have something like 65 public, private, and international universities based in Egypt, in addition to 11 research centers affiliated to Ministry of Higher Education, 15 affiliated to other ministries, and 150 research development and innovation department affiliated to different organizations. I'm not going to take a long time in some STI indicators, but I will move directly to this slide. This slide actually reflects the current situation of STI ecosystem in Egypt, and I believe in many other countries affiliated to Islamic Development Bank. As you see in the left of the slides, according to Saimago ranking of research countries as per international publication, you will see Egypt ranks 26th. It's in a very good position out of 230 or something like that countries. And if you look on the Global Innovation Index, for instance, you see Malaysia in ranks 36 out of 132, Egypt 94, and Portugal, for instance, which come after Egypt in ranking according to international publication, is the 31st. So the conclusion of this current situation of STI in Egypt is, of course, our STI system produces good quality international publication, which put Egypt in the position 26th according to international ranking. But the capability of the system to transform the knowledge and let's say international publications or information into economic value, which actually this is the innovation, is quite low. And this is very easily actually reflected in Global Innovation Index. So we spent a lot of time actually to do some sort of in-depth SWOT analysis of Egypt STI ecosystem and how to post the innovation ecosystem in Egypt. So I will move to, of course, Egypt has a vision for sustainable development. It paid too much attention that Egypt by 2030 shall have a balanced, diversified, competitive economy. This is the outlines of Egypt STI strategy 2030. Again, it pays too much attention to the mission is to nurture enabling environment for STI and improving its capability to produce knowledge efficiently and effectively. And the main strategic objective of Egypt STI is to enhance knowledge production, transfer, and helping other institutions in the country to achieve for sufficient and the deepening of local manufacturing. To achieve or to materialize this strategic objective, there are two main pillars of Egypt STI. The first pillar is to nurture enabling environment for STI. The second one is to boost and to enhance production, transfer, and localization of technology. Of course, this is the linkage between our programs and SDGs goals. We have 10 main programs. The first one is related to deepening of local manufacturing and technology transfer. Second one is dealing with innovation and entrepreneurship support, and so on. And as you can see, each main programs in our action plan support the successful implementation of one or three or a group of SDGs goal. I will speak about the action plan of ASRT as a national think tank of the country and the main supporter of the complete cycle of innovation in Egypt. To post the innovation ecosystem, we started with supporting legislation to innovation ecosystem in Egypt. New legislative actually were developed in the last few years, like the most important one, in my opinion, is Science, Technology, and Innovation Incentives Law, named in Egypt Law 23 for the year 2018. It gives a lot of incentives actually to the private sector support or collaborate or develop some sort of collaboration with academia, and also gives the permission and the right to the public research institution to establish and own startups or spin off and so on, in addition to exemption from taxes and many other incentives. Fortunately, we are lucky nowadays because we receive a lot of political support for science, technology, innovation ecosystem. And I will speak in more details about the main point of our action plan. We launched a lot of initiatives and programs to support the human capital, like entrepreneurship clubs, Children University, IPR Academy, IPR for Kids, all about capacity building and science and society. In the case of growth, for instance, we launched a lot of programs to technology transfer offices, IPR help desk, and so on. And the fund I mentioned that we have, at least in Egypt now, 3 main funding organizations. In the support, we established a national network for technological incubator, accelerator, and so on. Networking also established Egyptian Innovation Bank, Egyptian Knowledge Bank, and in education, of course, something. I'm not going to actually, this is just the examples as the initiatives in more details, some KPIs and so on. A lot of incubator, a lot of programs, initiatives to empower youth, women, to post and raise awareness in the field of intellectual property rights. And this is actually one of the most important platforms to boost social and open innovation ecosystem in Egypt, which is called Egyptian Innovation Bank, National Academy of Intellectual Property, and so on. As a result of this actually corrective action, our system now started to produce, let us say, technological products through some startups incubated and supported by public fund in the field of medical devices, in the field of agriculture sectors, in the field of nature conservation and rehabilitation of mangrove forest, for instance. This is very important.
Professor, I'm going to have to stop you. I'm sorry. Seven and a half minutes. Mashallah, mashallah. You've got great stuff there. I think my colleagues from Islamic Bank, I hope we have all these slides available for the audience to see. I think the photos and the work is really, really important. And I see the difference between Malaysia and Egypt is very evident. The focus of the countries will definitely give member countries the diverse thinking that you put in place.
Okay.
I think a takeaway from what you've said is really excellent, that you've got this separate money allocated, which is always the challenge for investing in innovation and startups. I think the other thing that you said about nurturing the entrepreneurship, creating those two key pillars, is also a point for us to take away, but also recognizing that universities, Oxford University and Imperial College, all these universities have also created in England decades ago to allow spin-offs to happen, to nurture sustainable innovation and have the startups flourish. So I think it's very commendable what you've done in Egypt, and I'm hoping that we can see and have more conversations with you about genomic research and analysis, which is the future for us in AI systems for health.
Okay.
So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. It was wonderful, but I know that the Islamic Bank is telling me to hurry up. The next speaker is our third country speaker, which is Professor Eugene Kossa. And she is going to talk about the experience in Mozambique. And Islamic Development Bank has recently supported the Republic of Mozambique to strengthen its capacity to develop evidence-based inclusive STI policies. And I love the word inclusive. That contributes towards the SDGs. Again, as Egypt said, SDGs and linking these things to sustainable development is a great way for countries to fast track and leapfrog of the industry's knowledge. Please tell us about your experience, the major challenges that you faced, and how you foresee the impact of STI policy framework to actually help the economic solutions and recovery in your country. Professor Eugene, over to you. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank the opportunity given to Mozambique to share the experience on developing evidence-based and inclusive science, technology, and innovation that contribute to SDGs. The first step is to say that the national system of STI in Mozambique started to show up when the Ministry of Higher Education, Science and Technology was created in 2000. And the creation of this ministry was to place the higher priority to eliminate the poverty and accelerate the Mozambican economy. In this way, the Council of Ministers approved two important instruments. The Policy of Science and Technology in 2003, with 4 important pillars: research, education, innovation, and dissemination of knowledge among the society. And to operationalize the policy, in 2006, the Council of Ministers approved the strategy of science, technology, and innovation. The approval of this strategy was to promote the development of an articulated system of science, technology, and innovation. Almost 16 years, the government of Mozambique started to review the policy of science and technology and its strategy. And the review process was possible with the support of the Islamic Development Bank in partnership with UNESCO. To review these two instruments, it was important to start off mapping the research and the innovation in Mozambique. The process of mapping the research and innovation in Mozambique used a participative method. The process involved key key stakeholders of science, technology, and innovation. I'm talking about higher education institution, research institution, ONGs, also private sectors, and so on. The result of the mapping process, it was the production of a report. And this report analyzed different dimensions and components of the STI system. I'm talking about the legal framework, the existing legal framework, the operational key policy instruments, the coordination and organizational structures, and also the report contained also the funding mechanisms. As I referred earlier, after this process of mapping research and innovation and produce a report, we started to review the policy. And now we are in the process of reviewing this policy. And also we are elaborating a new strategy of science, technology, and innovation for 2022-2032. Can we move for the next slide? In terms of the challenges, we think that the science technology policy implementation was surrounded by many shortfalls, deficiencies. And we also have as a challenge the limitation on monitoring and evaluating the 2003 policy, and also the strategy of the science, technology, and innovation of Mozambique. Another major challenge was the insufficient STEM research. We still have problems in doing research in the STEM areas. We have also has challenges the professional and technical skills all over the country. We think that this limitation contributed to the lack of the indicators in science, technology, and innovation policy implementation. Another major challenge is the exclusion in terms of the education, social, and innovation, access to education, social, and innovation. And this exclusion is connected to the gender bias, particularly in the STEM fields, in the private sector. Another major challenge has to do with the limited funds for innovation and research. In Mozambique, we are around 0.36%. We are below 1% of the GDP that is foreseen by the Strategy for Africa 2024 of the African Union. And I'm going to talk now about the impact of science, technology, and innovation policy framework on the economic situation. In our opinion,
Professor, I just want to let you know that we're at 7 minutes now. So maybe if you could do a 1 minute.
I'm finishing now. I'm finishing.
Thank you.
Yeah. We think that the update of science STI policy framework will help to improve the economic situation of Mozambique by increasing the funds that are allocated for research and development. We think also that it's important to adopt projects that are having into account the green, blue, and circular economy. And it is important also to provide support from school to post-school education and the training along the STEM pipeline, especially for young women. And we think also the increase of the number of the postgraduate students studies in engineering with particular emphasis on young women. Thank you for the attention.
Professor Eugenia, thank you so much for your intervention. I'm really grateful for the points that you've raised on the challenges of gender. I think as the world moves forward and technology, science and technologies is part of our daily lives, we need to make sure that from the early age, as you mentioned, in the school education system, we've encouraged girls in STEAM, and I think it's excellent. Creating the mapping of the research and innovation is going to help us make practical roadmaps so that we know from your evidence where and which sectors have the low-hanging fruit to leverage for STEM and innovation. I think you've articulated the challenges very clearly and the need of where interventions can support the realization and the full benefit from STI in your country. Again, I thank you for your contribution, and I feel that we have great opportunities for collaboration with the colleagues from Malaysia and from Egypt to make this more effective and increase your GDP spend from 0.3 to 3 at least, if not 30. Thank you so much. I will now shift gears and invite our colleague, Mohammed from the Islamic Development Bank to make his intervention. Mohammed is the officer in charge of STI department in ISDB, and I think a key facilitator for all these activities. So Mohammed, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Salma, very much, and welcome to the expert and the team. I'm just going to talk for a few minutes, only 2-3 minutes. I just want to give you an overview of STI ecosystem in the bank, and I would like to say that in the bank we really believe in the role of STI as a driver for economic development and socioeconomic growth. And that's why this is one of the events we are now supporting. For saying that we have developed a dedicated STI policy for the bank, and this policy is really focusing on 2 elements. One is to support the STI ecosystem in our member country. This is one of the pillars of the policy, to support the STI ecosystem in our member country, and that of course includes infrastructure, the capacity building, and policy development, as we have been doing with some member country for now. So this is one dimension. The second dimension of our policy is also to mainstream STI into our development sector in the bank. And this include, of course, important sectors such as agriculture, education, health, etc. So these are the 2 wings of our policy. And in order to put this policy into action, we have developed what we call our STAIS, our STI operational strategy, which actually represent our agenda for STI policy action. So this strategy is actually represent a roadmap on how to really implement the policy. And to do that, actually, we had to do some studies to assess the status of the STI ecosystem in our member countries, and to know what kind of needs are required for the member country. So with that, we have done a study, and we have used the international publication in innovation index and other indicator, and also we have done a survey. Based on that, we have come up with a kind of proposal or action plan to support our member country. If we go to the next slide, please. So this study has showed us that we don't have really uniformed group of country. We have different categories or different groups. As we have seen today, we have selected example from each group. So the first group we have in our member country that we call Group A, which having a maturing STI ecosystem. And we have heard to Malaysia, and we have seen how advanced the experience of Malaysia and how much service they can provide to other member countries. So in this group, we have 5 countries. This is Malaysia, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Emirates, and Iran. And this actually needs some set of support that may be different from the group number B or Group C. So in Group B, we have 18 countries, and Egypt representing this group. As Dr. Sakri said today, they have infrastructure, they have good research facilities, they have institution, but still the link for the private sector, the good effective monitoring and evaluation system, the translation of this into commercialization and innovation needs some support. This group also, we have designed a set of interventions that can help this group. The third group, which represent the majority of our member country, we have 34 groups here, and this mostly located in Africa, as you can see on the map on your right hand side. So this group, as we have seen the experience from Mozambique, they have infrastructure, they have some policy, STI policy in place, but they still need the support in creating the linkage between innovator actors to collect all of these things and improve them in order to allow innovation to happen. So this actually shows that we will have like differentiated approach to help our member country. It is not one size fits all. Based on that, we are working now on support plan, which reflects the need of each group and the need to support them. One of the advantage we have here that we have 3 groups that can benefit each other. And the bank has a very good program that we call it a reverse linkage program, where we have South-South collaboration. So this program, we are working also with the member country to exchange knowledge among the groups, to help it to accelerate collaboration among the groups. So this is one of the advantages of the bank can do. Of course, in addition to the financial resources that as my colleague in the previous presentation mentioned. So based on this analysis, we come up with a kind of a proposal how we will help our member country. If we go to the next slide, please. So this is just a quick snapshot on the need of each group and what are the priority area for each group. This is what we have developed recently. So, and then you see different groups, they need different support. So we are working on that now, and we are also aware of the multi-stakeholder, nature of STI. So we have the private sector, we have academia, we have government, we have financing institution. We are now also developing a partnership plan by which we capitalize on the strengths of each partner, each group of partners. So each group can play its role in supporting STI in our member countries. So now we are working with UN, with other stakeholders in order to develop this partnership plan by which we will be able, inshallah, to provide the concerted efforts to support our member countries. So this is in a nutshell, give you an overview of the system of the bank to support the member country. But one important consideration, as raised by my colleague, Dr. Kosa from Mozambique, this funding issue. We are all aware that this sector of STI is underfunded, they're lacking investment. As Mr. Vice President said at the beginning, there is a gap of 1 trillion. So we all agree that STI need to be supported financially. But the problem we have is that we don't really receive enough requests from member country to translate this need into projects, into intervention, into activity. So maybe we need also to hear from the expert today, and this is one of the objectives of this event. What is needed from our side to support the member country in order to invest more in STI? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think it's a perfect segue now, just to remind everybody, I've seen 3 questions in the chat, so that's great. Now we can shift gear and have our 2 final speakers in the first round that will be able to provide another insight, a completely different dimension from the UN development partners, firstly from UNESCO. I would like to invite Dr. Ezra Clark from UNESCO to touch upon, from UNESCO's perspective, how could countries better leverage their science policy and innovation, STI, for sustainable development goals? And I think this is in line with what Brother Mohammed was just saying about how can the bank really encourage more member countries to participate. So over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So let me just quickly express my thanks for the opportunity to participate in this important event today. So UNESCO, so that's United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, and I stress the scientific there, has a long-standing cooperation with its member states and various partners in the field of STI policy. And our work's really been guided by, and we've clearly heard this from the previous speakers, the strong conviction that STIs are central to socio-economic development, with the potential to bring sustainable solutions to the broad range of global challenges and crises we face. So if we can have the second slide, please. So the adoption of Agenda 2030 and the under United Nations and the Sustainable Development Goals really was a significant step in reaching this kind of common understanding, common recognition of the importance of the contribution of STIs to sustainable development. And we really need to approach from the very beginning, the production, dissemination and use of knowledge in an integrated, in a systematic manner if we want to really achieve these SDGs. So the STI systems are composed of a variety of actors, of fields, and of course the relationships between them. And we need to ensure multi-stakeholder participation in all stages of the policy cycles, from the policy setting to formulation, revision, implementation, monitoring and evaluation, giving the policy direction towards achieving these SDGs. And in this context, we can say UNESCO strongly advocates that governments should invest in creating STI-enabled societies by building robust and inclusive systems of STI governance, as well as building science-based evidence for these policies. And can we go to the next slide, please? So practically, what does that mean from the UNESCO point of view? So we've developed a number of standard setting instruments and frameworks in STI policies, and have also contributed to the development of joint UN frameworks and tools to support countries in this area. And one of these tools, which maybe the most familiar one, is GoSpin, the Global Observatory of Science, Technology, Innovation Policy Instruments, which aims to provide an evidence base for policy making in STI, notably for the monitoring and evaluation of policy and its implementation. So we work with countries to collect and analyze information and data on STI systems and policies, legal frameworks, operational policy instruments, and it's really a methodology for mapping the landscapes in a standardized way through a variety of means: surveys, inventories, desktop research, interviews, technical visits, all these things really to gather the information on both explicit and implicit STI policies, legal frameworks, operational policy instruments, and institutions involved. And such information informs not only the performance of the systems, but also serves to identify or detect potential gaps in the policy mix that may be identified as that can potentially be adjusted and reformed, that can be addressed. And through the GoSpin research, we pay particular attention to the contextual factors that influence STI. So the kind of the political, historical, cultural and socio-economic issues, as has been mentioned, all countries are different, that go beyond these traditional aspects. And then analysis and assessment of how STIs can tackle and contribute to the achievement of the certain targets of the STIs. So we can say that GoSpin has two main components. One is country profiles, which are substantive reports produced and published by UNESCO on a country demand basis. And the series so far includes 10 of these volumes, 2 of which were supported by the Islamic Development Bank. That's for Mozambique and Uzbekistan, as was mentioned in the opening by the Vice Minister, by Professor Gossa and Dr. Hebra just now. And we're currently working on 2 additional volumes, which will be published later in the year, which is for Kenya and for Cambodia. And the second element really of the GoSpin is an online platform, which is an open access platform containing STI policy related information, so far for more than 80 developing countries. We're currently in the process of expanding and improving this platform. And also it needs to fit into the monitoring and evaluation of the newly adopted UNESCO recommendation on open science, which is adopted by the member states in the end of last year, as well as the 2017 recommendation on science and scientific researchers. Can we jump to the next slide, please? So the final slide. So the results of our diagnostic service help us identify the strategic areas for investment, draw key policy recommendations, and could feed into the formulation of new policies or adjusting existing ones. And for example, as I just mentioned, with the support of the Islamic Development Bank, we completed the STI policy projects in Uzbekistan and Mozambique, which was some detail was provided to us by previous speakers. And these ended with the development of the country's national STI policies. And we believe that the mapping and diagnostic phase in both countries provided valuable information to feed the policy development process. And we're strengthening development of the framework that countries could use to lever STIs for SDGs, and also continuing to strengthen our collaboration with the various UN partners, notably the UN Interagency Task Team, to expand our offer to countries to produce more similar useful materials, such as the UN Guidebook on STIs for SDG roadmaps. So I shall stop there. Thank you very much, moderator.
Thank you so much. I think that this is a really good summary and a collection and consolidation of what the works are you are doing as UNESCO, making it easier for countries to actually look at a framework that helps understand the network within the STI systems. And I think what you've mentioned, the UN tool of GoToSpin, is an excellent tool that I think people should look at if they haven't already seen it. Thank you for being in time. I'd like to now move to Ms. Limping from UNCTAD. If you could briefly touch on, within 5 minutes would be great, what UNCTAD's role has been in science and technology policy review for member states. It's since 1998, a long time, and with the contributing for development in science and technology capacity building and helping build innovation. What challenges have you faced, and what do you believe are the priority areas for focus? And can you make some recommendations for our member countries to be able to catch up on the fourth industrial revolution? And I think this is a really important question. As you know, that we had the MDGs in 2000 to be achieved by 2015, and now we have the SDGs to be achieved in 2030. We do have a long journey mapped out, for which I hope we can actually be successful leveraging science and technology. So over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Salma. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Very loud and clear.
Okay, great. Thank you, first of all, for inviting UNCTAD to participate in this meeting. We have been doing STI policy review in capacity of UNCTAD Secretariat, but also in capacity of UN Commission on Science and Technology for Development. There are three biggest challenges that we have encountered, which we think are also actually faced by the countries reviewed. The first challenge is that the government agency, either a ministry, department, or an institute that is in charge of STI was usually of a size in terms of financial resources or staffing that did not permit it to function in a manner meeting the needs of the country's STI development. The agency did not have sufficient power either to coordinate with other stakeholders. These inadequacies might be attributed to two factors. One is high-level political support was not adequate. Second, the STI policy was not mainstreamed into national development agenda, and therefore inadequate attention was given to STI. The second challenge is common understanding of the focus of STI policies was lacking among policymakers and other stakeholders. And the kind of common understanding was especially lacking when there were strongly embedded ideas about innovation that were narrow and linear in nature, as opposed to systemic thinking, which is innovation should be supported by an innovation system. And the third challenge is finding ways to address the inadequacies encountered with business innovation indicators. We can often find data on human resources and on government funding and financial support to research, but to some extent IPR, but it is difficult to find data on other indicators. For example, the interaction between firms, the share of persons employed in innovative firms, etc. And regarding the second question, what are the priority focus areas? The STI policy review's goal is to assess how the country's innovation system is working, identify the gaps, and recommend policy actions to improve or strengthen the national innovation system. So during the STI policy review, we look at the development context of the country, the STI policy issues, and institutional arrangement for governing STI policy making and implementation. In addition, we also examine specific sectors identified by the reviewed countries as priorities. Now, coming to the final question, what were the recommendations for the Industry 4.0 revolution? While the fourth industrial revolution, we usually call it the Industry 4.0, is featured by smart and connected production systems through the combination of traditional and new and frontier technologies, such as AI, Internet of Things, big data, automation, robotics. The major benefits from Industry 4.0 are productivity and efficiency gains. Thus, Industry 4.0 revolution is expected to generate positive impact on sustainable development. And most developing countries are still yet to have an industrial sector that is ready to deploy this kind of technologies. Therefore, it will be a challenge for them. The Industry 4.0 revolution hasn't been looked at actually in the STI policy reviews so far, as it is relatively new for many developing countries. But we discussed this issue at the recent UN Commission on Science Technology for Development from 28th March to the 1st April. And from that CSDD, there were a couple of actual recommendations that are useful, I think, and I would like to share with the participants today. Of course, strategies for Industry 4.0 are highly contextual, depending on the country's industrialization, technological and productive capabilities, and national priorities. But there are a few things that maybe are taken by the countries. First, raise awareness about Industry 4.0 through different activities, meetings, and demonstration initiatives in science parks, incubators, accelerators, and innovation labs. Second, work out a national strategy through a participatory multi-stakeholder mechanism involving the private sector, industrial associations, academic or research institutes, and the labor organization to direct the coordinated deployment of Industry 4.0 and alignment of innovation with industrial policies. Third, make affordable, high-quality access to the internet and building workforce, in particular digital skills for Industry 4.0 for the business sector, particularly SMEs, as the Industry 4.0 is highly featured with digital technologies. Fourth, formulate an Industry 4.0 specific investment promotion plan to put investment in line with the national strategy for Industry 4.0, including mobilizing investment in digital infrastructure. At the same time, finance the deployment of Industry 4.0 through innovation and technology funds, for example, financed by the public sector, international donors, or developed banks. Fifth, while protecting workers, this is to protect workers and ease workforce transitions. Industry 4.0 will create jobs. At the same time, it will displace workers whose skills are not up to date. Therefore, the country needs to put in place adjustment programs for workers who are going to be affected. And finally, I think the country should also seek their external collaboration with countries that are capable to deploy their 4.0 industry technologies. For example, I've just heard the presentation from the ISDB representative. Within ISDB member countries, there are countries that are more advanced. So for other countries, I think they're using this kind of resources is also very useful. So to conclude with just one observation, Professor Sama, we think the state has a crucial role in creating an ecosystem for the country to benefit from and address challenges from Industry 4.0 revolution. Thank you.
Thank you so much for a very concise presentation. I think that you've touched on very, very important points that we can all actually see, and hopefully governments around the world have been able to recognize that due to the COVID experience for government's communications for coronavirus, mitigation and response activities, how the internet digital technology was used, but also how to keep the economy going and online, the shift very quickly to digital transformation. I believe that you've raised some fantastic recommendations. As many of the people in the chat box have said, we have to move faster, and I think leverage the work that we've been doing in the space of digital transformation to actually be inclusive and broader in science and technology, as you've recommended. I think that it's in an oversight in many governments to have excluded and kept ICTs outside of STI, which they are important of. The role of artificial intelligence systems is really critical, the whole supply chain management and other context of really predicting where we go. What you mentioned about reskilling and being aware is also very important, not to leave a large population behind and ensure that the critical infrastructure that is required to create 4.0 adoption is affordable and accessible. I think these are really important points that you raise. The external collaboration, I think, is what we're doing with the Islamic Bank today. Looking at the 5 minutes remaining that we have, I'm going to move to what I consider to be the most important part of this discussion, which is synthesizing all the points that have been raised and moving into I'm just going to raise the questions that have come to me from the participants. At least we have to have the 5 minutes for the participants to make it rich interaction. And I'd like to move to then talking about the fostering in collaboration with Professor Hazami and also with Ms. Limpin and Dr. Clark to sort of bring this, but also to include, I think it would be very important for us to be able to bring in Dr. Hibra from the ISDB in the response to these questions. So the first question that we have is, it's from Nizar Hussain from Cairo to Malaysia. And that is, how can countries avoid the financial burden that comes with trying to catch up with specific skill limitation? So I'm going to read the questions, but this is addressed to Dr. Hazami. This is for you. The second question is from Jay Sergeant. The National Academy of Sciences is well integrated into Malaysians' STI ecosystem. How can this be further developed? Again, this is to Dr. Hazami. A third question is from Wagdi from Islamic Development Bank. Oh, Islamic Development Bank must not wait for member countries, but propose to member countries of what interventions they could actually implement so that they can accelerate their development using science and technology. That's a very good question. And then from Hassan to the Islamic Development Bank, what interventions has the bank put in place that can help prioritize support for STI programs that you've identified from your member countries? And the last question is fifth question is from Adir to Islamic Bank. How can the Islamic Bank help reduce the shortage of skilled people for STI that affects the competitiveness and the productivity of member countries? So five very good questions, 2 addressed to Malaysia and 3 to ISDB. But I will also like to have 1 minute from UNCTAD and UNESCO after these questions are answered. So we'll maybe go over by 3 minutes. Over to you, Professor Hazmi Habib.
Thank you, Prof. Salman. For the question how to catch up and also how do we bridge the gap of monetary issue of funding in most of the members countries, one of the alternative that Malaysia also looking into is to have an alternative funding for R&D, not to put 100% from the government, but how do we find other alternative funding? This is where we need more and more industry involvement in participating into the STI development, not 100% from the government. So if that is the way, the way forward, what we need to form is a platform for all members countries to find ways on how to have a pool of alternative funding that we can help each other. Because we know certain countries, member countries, have gaps in terms of GDP that is too low, below 1%, so on and so forth. That's how we can do and bridge the gap. In terms of to catch up technology, if you see under the 1010 STIE, Malaysia also facing a problem on how we want to catch up with the latest technology. So with the proper planning and knowing what is the needs and make sure the impact is there, we need to have the experts based on the 10 technology that we have identified, because this 10 technology will transform whatever field that we want to transform, be it in biotechnology, nanotechnology, digital technology, neurotechnology, and also green technology. If we can enhance this 10 technology and plan it well using the framework that Malaysia has developed. In Malaysia, what we do, we can have certain technology that we can catch up of what other people have done. But by knowing the needs, we also can do leapfrogging technology in planning using this 10 for us to have niche for us to lead. So with that, it will address the issues. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for your answer. But I'm also going to ask our colleagues from Egypt and from Mozambique, can you also give me, listening to the question, do you have a 1-minute intervention? I'll start with Professor Eugenia from Mozambique. From the questions that I just read, especially of how the bank can further help, would you like to make an intervention, please? Over to you, Professor Eugenia.
Yes, please. Yes, we think that the first step would be to increase the dissemination of STI funding opportunities. It's our first step. There is a need to increase the dissemination. And we can use the webinars, and we can train, provide the trainings for the potential beneficiaries. We are talking about the ministries, higher education institution, research and development institution. We think also that it would be important to have focal points from the member country that the states, member country states, right? So that they can serve as the linkage between the research and the development institution and the government.
Thank you.
In order to increase the dissemination of the mechanisms of the IsDB fundings opportunities.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think you've raised a very important issue. I think this webinar is all part of a big package that the Islamic Bank team is doing. And I think Dr. Mohammed Hibra is leading within the IsDB family to take this out. I believe that more webinars and more examples of different type of funding packages will help the member countries understand what is at stake. The focal point, I think, is very clear, and I can see this, but letting other countries know. And most importantly, the focal point in the country inward is always the Ministry of Finance. So how do they bring the stakeholders together? Thanks for that intervention. Excellent. I'll move over now to Professor Mahmoud. If you can give me 1 minute of what the bank can do more to help member countries take advantage of STI initiative. Thank you. Over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. I actually support also very much that IsDB having some sort of focal point in member states is really very important. Focal point in organization affiliated to STI. This is the most important issue. I don't know. Maybe, of course, there is a governmental representation of different countries, but it's important to keep in direct touch with the organization working in the field of STI. This is actually my first point. My second point, I believe that, of course, funding of STI is very important, but the most important issue, I believe, at least in some countries, is actually to learn from the success and successful track record of some member states like Malaysia and others, in the field of STI. So we would like to support very much brain circulation among countries from the different groups. I liked very much the presentation of Dr. Muhammad about Science, Technology and Innovation Policy of Islamic Development Bank. It diagnosed in a very professional and precise way the current situation in member states. So such kind of information policy exchange and visibility is really very, very important. I propose actually that ISDB support a partnership research development and innovation program for sustainable development in member states. ISDB can provide some seed money, some coordination and so on, but the member state also can support through co-funding mechanisms. So funding is important, but the most important actually is to support the brain circulation among member states. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I think that you've absolutely listening to this presentation and looking at the statistics that you presented for the global ranking, I think we can see Indonesia, Saudi Arabia, Malaysia, Egypt, and Pakistan, 5 member countries right on the top of the list. You know, between 21 and 27, there's great opportunity to leverage the knowledge and expertise in these countries at the policy level. So I know it's 5 past, Mohammed. I was trying to keep us to 12. I definitely do not want to miss out colleagues from, Ezra from UNESCO. I'm going to go back to you 1 minute, sir, for yourself. And then Ms. Limping, I'll leave you at the end because I think I love the way you summarize. I've made copious notes for the Islamic Bank so we can do a debriefing, but I think we need 2 hours, Mohammed. This is not enough time for these beautiful interactions of this very important topic, maybe a half a day webinar. So Ezra, over to you, sir. 1 minute.
Thank you. I shall certainly try to be 1 minute. So I would really echo the words of Professor Sacco just now. Okay, we've talked about the funding, but really the focus on, I would say, the most appropriate and applicable approaches, and really we can explore that through South-South cooperation. So this is something which is underlined as a key factor in Agenda 2030 in terms of the SDGs, and is part of UNESCO's medium-term strategy, so our kind of internal strategy planning. So we continue to offer countries the fora and platforms for dialogue, for sharing experiences of lessons learned, and practice on policy development implementation. And I would again mention GoSpin as a tool, but that, as well as other instruments, we see methodologies and powerful tools in this regard. And really, these can really assist countries to mutually learn from each other and find perspectives for increased South-South cooperation in this regard. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Ms. Limping, if I may ask you 1 minute from the excellent interventions you made, what do you feel, what can Islamic Bank do more, and how can we work together with UNCTAD to really help address the issue, how STIs can actually become more mainstreamed and integrate in the greater sustainable development within the countries? Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sama. I have just 3 points to add to the previous speakers. The first point is that everywhere there's a limit to resources. So I think it's very important. The top most important is to decide on the priorities, to decide on which kind of technologies that are really useful for the member countries of Islamic Development Bank. And I think even though there are diverse needs among the member countries, but I think through a kind of discussions that can be reached, that kind of understanding can be reached. So this is the first point, to decide on the priorities and to put the resources for that purpose. The second point is that, well, among the ISDB bank member countries, there are different levels. So I think ISDB can organize events to share knowledge and the technologies among the member countries. This is perhaps less resources needed than the other things, but still I think it's useful. The last point is that, as you've rightly pointed out, I think Islamic Development Bank can well complement to what the UN agencies are doing. For example, UNESCO is doing something, UNCTAD is doing something. So at least you see the UN agencies, they are doing a lot on the policy level. So I think definitely there can be room for cooperation, and we are actually ready to cooperate with the bank. And I think today's event is good a sign of collaboration between Islamic Development Bank and the UN agencies. Thank you.
Thank you so much indeed. Again, always bringing in another dimension. Thank you for your list. I love it. 1, 2, 3. Leveraging on what you've just said, I think that it's really, really important that STI, and I think some of our colleagues from the Academy of Sciences have seen from a UN perspective, from us as a global company, we look in and see that each of the ministries have their own agenda, they have their own budget allocation. So unless the president or the prime minister and the ministers are all equal and see the value of STI in each of their initiatives, it's very difficult to actually allocate budget just for STI. So I think one of the things, multi-sectorial view that the Islamic Bank can bring with UNCTAD and UNESCO will really help the focus on STI and for countries to see the benefit for their own greater stability, scalability, and economic growth, but also survivability for the future next pandemic. God knows when that will happen. So on that morbid note of great interest of knowledge and collaboration, I think that each of our 5 speakers have presented an excellent insight and view. I don't want to miss my dear focal point from the Islamic Development Bank. I think, Dr. It's very important, Dr. Mohammed, that you make your 1-minute remark because everything is targeted for you. I've summarized this so that we can have Mohammed Hebra, your point, your action items, they're all for you. And then Mohammed, my friend, please allow me this extra 1 minute to you as well to close. So after Dr. Hebra, I will hand over to Mohammed Abeida to close the session. Thank you, and please apologies for the 10-minute slide. Over to you.
Thank you very much again, Salma. I think I cannot agree more with what have been said by the panelists and the experts. What I would like maybe to add now is that every partner has a role to play. As my colleague from UNCTAD said, we wanted the government to play its role in creating the enabling environment. We wanted the financing institution to provide the finance. We wanted the UN to provide the expertise, the policy support, etc., etc. So we are, as I said, in the bank, we believe in our capacity in providing financial instruments and also creating a dialogue and exchange of knowledge and experience. So we will continue to foster this track while also expecting our partners and counterparts to also join our hands in doing also their part from their side. So at the end, we have orchestrated efforts of all players. So I would like to thank all the panelists, Dr. Sakr, Dr. Kusa, Madam Hazami, and all for this really important event. This is just the start. This is just the start, and expect a lot of such nature events in the pipeline, inshallah. Thanks again.
Thank you so much indeed. And I would also like to add my congratulations to the panelists. I really squeezed you on time. I really want to learn more. I'm sure we will have another briefing session that Mohammed and his team will organize with Dr. Habra of how we can really take some salient points that were very quickly said. And now I will move to ask everybody to please open your cameras, and 1 minute closing remark from Mohammed Abeida, the Director General for the Center of Excellence in Asia. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and bye. The mic is muted.
Thank you very much, Professor Salma, and for the excellent and as usual, the brilliant moderation, and also wrapping up the outcome of this immensely enlightening webinar. And it is coming to a close, and on behalf of the Islamic Development Bank, allow me to express our sincere appreciation and gratitude to yourself and the esteemed speakers and panelists for the highly engaging webinar and the vastly valuable experiences shared during the discussion. As this webinar is a pre-ISDB annual meeting event, we assure you that we will share the outcomes and the valuable recommendations with ISDB managements and all concerned departments for consideration and implementation. The country experiences for developing and adapting STI ecosystem and for sustainable and inclusive growth of Malaysia, presented by Madam Hazami Habib, and Egypt, presented by Professor Mahmoud Sakar, and Mozambique, presented by Professor Eugenia Cosa, were very highly practical and valuable to ISDB and its member countries, as they represented diverse yet relevant, very relevant context. Also, the International Development Organization perspective highlighted by Dr. Ezra Clark from UNESCO and Mrs. Lippingtang from UNCTAD on how countries could better leverage STI for Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, and instruments developed to support countries in strengthening their STI system were indeed insightful and offer opportunities for expanded collaboration. So again, I would like to reiterate my sincere thanks to you, Professor Salma, for this moderation and the excellent wrap-up of the session, which contained valuable takeaways for ISDB, but also for our member countries. And I would like to acknowledge the attendees and the audience and the participants who raised very important questions, and also for interacting with the speakers and enriching the discussion. The Center of Excellence of the bank in Kuala Lumpur, which is mandated to support comprehensive ecosystem development in strategic development areas, including STI, is committed and will be ready to exchange this ecosystem among member countries and foster the collaboration and the benefit from the success stories and also the challenges faced by each member country. The Center of Excellence launched also an e-gateway platform which facilitates matchmaking between solution seekers and solution providers, and we welcome your engagement and collaboration through this digital platform. Finally, I would like to extend special thanks and appreciation to His Excellency, our VP, Dr. Mansour Mukhtar, for inspiring opening remarks, and for ISDB management for their support. Brother Jamil Yusha as a master of the ceremony of this event, and all the organizers of the webinar, my colleagues from STI department, the Center of Excellence, and FIQA, and the communication department for the successful organization of this important event. Once again, I look forward for continuing this discussion and to maybe having another follow-up event with a deeper discussion in the near future and the longer discussion, hopefully. And with that, thank you for your attention. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. See you soon. Thank you.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you.
Alaikum assalam. Thank you.
شكرا جزيلا.
Yeah, if we can take a photo session, everybody can put his camera on. Sorry. Yes. Okay. Yes. Great. I think our colleague in FIQA, it's okay?
Yes. Thank you very much.
Okay. Keep safe, and maybe next year in our next year annual meeting, we'll have face-to-face meeting. Looking forward to meeting you.
Inshallah. Thank you, Abida. Thank you so much. Thank you, Salma. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.